When you're making deviled eggs, there are a few tricks I want to show you. First of all, you want the yolk to wind up in the center of the egg, not off to one side. Secondly, you want the yolk to be completely yellow. You don't want it to have the green ring around it. I'm going to show you how to avoid that. And third, you want to make sure that when you're peeling the hard-boiled egg, that it peels easily. I'll show you how to do that too. And then last, I'll give you a recipe for making the final center yummy part of the deviled egg. There's one more tip I want to give you. If possible, buy your eggs several days in advance, even a week in advance, because if you buy them ahead of time and let them sit in your refrigerator a few days, they'll be even easier to peel. The fresher the egg, the harder they're going to be able to peel. So if you're just watching this now and you want to make deviled eggs for tomorrow or the next day and you're just about to go out to the store, well, they're going to be a little harder to peel. That's okay. So buy them ahead of time you're shopping. Let them sit a few days in the fridge. The night before you're going to boil the eggs to make them hard boiled, or even several hours before, prop them out of the cart like this carton and set them on their side. They can be on their side anywhere. If you put them in the carton on the side, you can't shut it, but just let them set like that for several hours or overnight, and that will help to center the yolk inside the egg so that it's not off to one side. All right, I'm ready to boil the eggs, but before I boil them, I want them to sit out on the kitchen counter for 30 minutes, just so they're not overly cold. So 30 minutes on the clock, let them sit on the counter, and then we'll be ready to cook them. Now that the eggs have rested on the kitchen counter for 30 minutes, and so they're not so cold, put them in a large pan. This is a Dutch oven. They're sitting in the bottom, and I'm going to put water in there, just cold tap water. And you want to make sure that there's at least an inch of water above the eggs or a little more. So I'm going to keep putting, it's going to be pretty close to the top actually for these. And that's enough water. Now I'm going to put them on the stove and turn on the burner to high. And I'm going to put a lid on here and set a timer for about 7 minutes. And I'm going to check it in 7 minutes. It probably won't be boiling yet, but then after 7 minutes I'll check it about once every minute. And I want to get it to boiling, to a full boil. When it finally starts boiling, take the lid off, and you want to put in some white vinegar. Actually, turn the heat off. Pour in some white vinegar, about a tablespoon. So I have a big container. I'm just putting in a splash. This will also help the shells separate. Now with the heat off, if you have an electric burner, you're going to have to take this off the stove and put it on a cool burner or somewhere else cool. I have a gas stove, so I'm just turning it off. And now you're going to put the lid on and set the timer for 30 minutes. And they're going to finish cooking inside the pot without the heat on, which is great because then they're not boiling over each other and bumping into each other. They're just finishing cooking in the hot water. After the eggs sat in the hot water for 30 minutes, put some ice cubes and cold water in a large bowl, and then take each egg out one at a time with a slotted spoon and put them in the cold water. This will keep the egg yolk from getting that green ring around it. So put all the eggs into the cold water and set the timer for 20 minutes. I get them all on the bottom there. 20 minutes in the cold water. Now that the eggs have cooled for 20 minutes, you're going to take each one out, and on the counter, you're just going to tap it all the way around so it gets cracked all the way around. And do this with each egg. See how I'm doing this? It's kind of hard to see a white egg cracked. If I had used brown eggs, it would have been easier to see. But I'm just cracking it all the way around. But rather than try to pull it off, I'm going to put each one back into the water and just continue giving them all a light tap all the way around I'm going to do it with all 12. And after I've done the 12th one, I'm going to set the timer for another 10 minutes because as it sits in the water pre-cracked like this, it's going to get some water inside and help to separate the shell from the egg even more, so they're even easier to open. Now, in all these steps I've given you so far, don't let it sit in the hot water more than 30 minutes. Don't let it sit in the cold ice water for more than 20 minutes, because the longer they sit, it'll be even harder to pull the shell off, and you don't want that. So I'm going to turn off the camera while I continue to pre-crack these eggs on the counter, and then I'll set the timer for 10 minutes and I'll come back. The 10 minutes are up and I've taken out each of the pre-cracked eggs and put them on a plate on the side, and I dumped out the water that was in the bowl and I put in more water, because now I'm going to pull the shell off under running water, and after it's all off I'm going to put the egg into the water so that any little remaining pieces of shell can just wash off in the water. So I'm just going to dribble the water a little bit in more kind of a tepid temperature, and the shells can go anywhere. So with a little bit of running water, it can just help to get this to come off a little easier. I don't know if you can see that white on white. Oop, I'm getting a little bit of egg going with it. And that one came off. And then when I'm done, I'll give it a little rinse and drop it in the water. And then go on to the next one. So I just start by looking for a little spot that seems like it's ready to go, so that I don't take a chunk of egg with the shell. There's a membrane inside right under the shell that you want to pull off with it. Sometimes it stays on the egg and you have to pull it off after. So it takes a little time, and I'm not going to make you watch me peel all 12. But this is a point where you don't want to wait. You don't want to get busy and then more than 10 minutes goes by, because they'll just get harder and harder to peel as time goes on. So there's just certain portions of making deviled eggs where you need to have full attention when the timer goes off to get to the next step. Okay, so that's my second egg. And sometimes they're not completely smooth, but that's okay. So I'm going to turn off the video and do the rest of my eggs and show you what's next. Once you're done peeling all the eggs, put them on a plate or in a bowl and put them in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. This will make them easier to slice. Now that the eggs have refrigerated for about 30 minutes, we're ready to slice them in half. You can use a straight edge knife like one of these. A paring knife is fine, so I'll get rid of this one. And you're just going to slice them in half like this. And hopefully your yellow yolk is centered, which is nice if it's not too close to an edge. And then just pop the yolk into a bowl, and if you need to, you can use a little spoon. It's okay if there's a little bit left over, because you're going to be filling these anyway. So just do this with all of them. Sometimes you'll get one that doesn't cooperate too much, but mostly they're going to be pretty nice like this. And I'm not going to make you watch me do this with all 12 eggs. Now that I've popped out all of the center yellow yolk into a bowl, I'm ready to mash it with a fork. So this could take some time to get it to a fine consistency, but this is how you do it. You get going anyway, and you do all of them until they're right where you want them. I guess if you have a small size food processor, you could put them in there. The thing is, you don't want to lose any of these. You don't want any of it stuck inside the food processor bowl where you have to then wash it out and then you lose it from your mixture. And I'm actually just about done, but there's still a little bit. I'm going to turn the camera off so you don't have to spend the time watching me get this really small. Now that I've finished mashing up all the yellow, I'm going to add the rest of the ingredients. I'm going to start with half a cup of mayonnaise. You can use whatever you want. If you like Miracle Whip, use that. If you've got a favorite mayonnaise, use that. A half a cup. And you can use the fork, but you might end up using a spoon or a spatula. Doesn't matter. Then to this, I'm going to add a few more ingredients. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of white vinegar. Don't skip the white vinegar. It gives it a nice little tang. And I already measured out the dry ingredients. And in this little bowl, I have 1 teaspoon of dry ground mustard and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Yeah, a spoon would be easier. Bigger spoon would be easier. And then I have one more ingredient that I really like, and you might have your favorites, and that's fine. You can add whatever you want. But I really like chives. Chives are a little bit oniony tasting. They come in a package like this. They're long and green, and after rinsing them off and patting them dry, you cut them with a knife on the cutting board into these little bits. Now, if you've never tasted chives and you're not sure if you like them, then just use about 2 teaspoons. I've got about 4 teaspoons here because I like chives. And they add a pretty little green color without going overboard. Some people add bacon bits, some people add hot sauce or some other chopped hot pepper. I don't really care for that myself. But the more ingredients you add, the fluffier you can make, the more you can mound it on top of the egg. I didn't put much in here, so I'm not going to mound much. Now, some people put this filling inside of a piping bag or inside of a plastic bag and then cut the corner off and pipe it into the egg. But you're going to lose some. It's going to stick inside the bag and you're going to end up having to wash it out or throw out the bag if you're using baggie. I just use a spoon because I don't have many ingredients here. So I just use a spoon, and that's a good one. And I usually do all of them at once. I'm just going to show you one here. And you can just put it in like that. And then as one last little thing for this recipe, I take some paprika, my hand has egg in it, paprika that has a shaker top, and I just shake a little bit on top. And then storing them, that's the last thing, because of course you're going to make this ahead of time before a party, and then if you have to take them to a party, it's even more. So you can get some kind of a container, plastic container, like a Tupperware type container. That is, I have one that's square. It's about 10 by 10 or 12 by 12, and I can do a single layer of these inside and then put the top on and store it in my refrigerator, and it's easy to take them with me. Or, of course, there are things that you can buy that have a little recess thing for each egg. That's going to be more expensive, and of course you can only use that for eggs. So storing them is the next thing. You can store them in your refrigerator. before your party. I would do this step shortly before you're going to serve it or shortly before you're going to take them. So you can get this far and then store your filling in a container and store the egg halves in a separate container and refrigerate them, and then even the next day or later on in the day assemble them ready to eat. All right? So if you have any questions, post them in the comment section and I will keep an eye on that and try to answer your questions. And if you have any other ingredients to suggest to add to the filling, go ahead and add a comment. We'd like to know what other ideas you have. Thank you.